In this video, we're going to look at how do we classify polynomials by a degree. So the way we're going to find degrees is if we have a monomial, we find it one way. If we have anything other than a monomial, we find it another way. So with a monomial, what we're going to do is we're going to add all of the exponents on our variables together. If we have a non-monomial, so if you think about it, all other polynomials are composed of monomials. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at each of those monomial terms. And looking at each term, we're going to find the degree, and then we're going to name the entire polynomial by the largest degree we find. So just a couple additional vocab terms. You may want to pause these and look through them a little bit more in depth. Make sure you get them written down. Or like I said, if you have the templates, make sure you pause them and read through them. But essentially a couple things to remember is that if we don't have a variable, it's degree 0. Remember that if there is no exponent written on a variable, it means it has a degree of 1. And we have some special names if only one variable is present. If we have just an x term or just a y term, so essentially a variable with degree 1, we're going to call that our linear term. If we have degree 2, our quadratic term, our degree 3, our cubic term. And if there is no variable part, if it's just a number, we're going to call it our constant term. You've probably heard me use that term before. Going ahead to look at some examples. I have 4 examples where we want to first classify by the degree, then if it exists, we'll also name the constant, linear, quadratic, and cubic term. Remember, that only is going to exist if we have one variable present. So looking at example 1, so I see that I have a polynomial here, so I'm going to go ahead and say that this term has degree 5, this term has degree 3, degree 1, because again, I remember if there is no variable, or excuse me, if there is no exponent written on the variable, it's a 1, and just a constant is degree 0. So I'm going to go ahead and name the largest, so I'm going to go ahead and say this is degree 5, and then just vocalizing what each of the other terms are. Because there is only x's involved, I can go ahead and say that my constant term is 7, my linear term negative 4x, my quadratic term, negative 2x, oh, excuse me, there is no quadratic term, and then my cubic term, negative 2x cubed. And again, we don't have a name past cubic. Looking at example 2, already I can see that I have multiple variables involved, so I'm going to go ahead and ignore this back end piece. It's a polynomial, so I'm going to look at each individual term, which again is made up of monomials. So each individual term, and go ahead and classify the degree on each term. Well, on my first term, I see my x has a 2, my y a 1, my z is 6, and if I reference up a little further in my notes, I see I add those together. So I'm going to go ahead and say 2 plus 1 plus 6. And I'm going to go ahead and say that gives me 3, so 9. On my second term, I'm going to go ahead and say 4 plus 3, so 7. And on my third term, I just have the single variable, so just a 5. And looking for the largest one, I see my largest term has degree 9, so I'm going to say my overall degree of this entire trinomial is degree 9. Going on to example 3 and 4, if you feel like you've got it, these are great ones to pause and try. On example 3, again, I have 3 terms. I have more than one variable, so again, I'm not going to have to worry about naming the different terms, but I do have to find the degree, so I'm going to go ahead and add the exponents on each monomial, on each term. So let's see, I'm going to have 6 plus 4, so I'm going to have 10. I'm going to have 1 plus 1 plus 3, because remember, when looking at the x and y, if there is no variable, or excuse me, no exponent written, it is a 1, so I do get 5. And 4 plus 3 plus 1 gives me 8. So again, naming the highest degree, I do get degree 10. And looking at this last example, I notice I only have one variable, so I am going to take this a step further, and I am going to name the constant, linear, quadratic, and cubic term if those exist. But first, naming the degree, I look at each term, and I see on that first term I have a 2. And on my second term I also have a 2, because I realize now, looking a little bit closer, I forgot to combine my like terms. So putting those together, I'm going to have 2x squared minus 3x plus 8. And now going back, naming my degree, I get degree 2, degree 1, and degree 0. So the largest one would be degree 2. So my overall degree is degree 2. And if I name my constant term is 8. My linear term would be negative 3x. And my quadratic term would be 2x squared. Again, that's all. I don't have a cubic term, but I can name those 3. Once again, if you have questions on these, please do make sure you bring them with you to class so we can talk about them. And make sure you, once again, just review up here, especially not only the actual vocab, but also the steps on finding the degree.